Hello, Barney.
Of the town.
Don't know who had yesterday. The county was off.
Yeah, they usually federal government is off and whatever's going on to federal government.
Sure. Don't know who had. Oh, yesterday. The county was off.
Yeah, they usually federal government is off and whatever's going on to federal government.
Sure. Don't know who had. Oh, yesterday. The county was off.
Yeah, they usually
You heard that now?
You heard it?
You can hear us talking now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
great. We can hear you now.
Perfect,
So
thank
I
you.
was just-
Sorry I was a little late. I forgot there was a time change.
Oh, yeah.
Daylight savings time here in Arizona.
Oh, nice.
Right, they don't do that or whatever it is.
So I was just going through a little bit of background, Jen, in terms of kind of how I'm framing the discussion for a starting point tonight, and then Amy had just asked kind of, how are we gonna take this to the board? And I would, yes, we can circle back to that implementation strategy that you all had worked on with Cassidy earlier this year. So that we can report back to the board, but I also still need to get the other boards and commissions reviews and compiled and put that together. So I might suggest let's put that
Okay.
question more at the end of the discussion after we get some direction from you all, maybe on where you'd like to focus or what work you'd like to tackle.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me share my screen again. Go back to this. So, all right. Wildfire mitigation. As you know, the board has this as a high priority. And there are a couple policies in the comprehensive plan that talk directly about wildfire mitigation. The first is review and adopt a WUI code that reflects the state's regulations and Lion's needs, and then develop wildfire mitigation strategic plans. So I want to acknowledge that PCDC, I think, expressed a desire to have influence and work in this area. As I went back to listen to the conversations in March, it sounded like you all, I think, are really interested in being involved in this conversation, and I agree that's appropriate. To date, we haven't brought these conversations to you, but that doesn't mean they're, oh, let me check him. Okay. Thank you. We're live streaming. Doesn't mean we can't. So I want to just do a little background. In 2023, there was state legislation to establish a wildfire resiliency code board at the state level that was comprised of experts kind of across the spectrum of wildfire and hazards. And collectively, they wrote and then formally adopted at the state level a code. And in conjunction with the code, they adopted a map, and Lyons is mapped in this certain tier category. So this code does apply to Lyons. The state legislation gives us until the end of March, I believe, to adopt the code, and then midsummer to implement the code. We took an update. The board kind of impaneled a task force that was comprised of Trustee Browning, Trustee Lowell, and Aaron Kaplan, Director Kaplan, and then some members of the fire district. And then I've kind of tagged on to that here now that I'm in here. So they have been tracking the WRC code and made some recommendations to the board at a meeting in September. The board directed staff to get this code adopted as soon as we reasonably can, with some consideration of retroactive mitigation. And I think that would be an opportunity for PCDC to potentially weigh in with some of their thoughts. But in terms of next steps, what I would like to do to get you all up to speed on this topic, we have a couple different ways we can do it. The town board is holding a town hall. They have quarterly town halls, you probably recall, that are topic focused. And so on October 30th, their town hall is going to be regarding the wildfire resiliency code, as well as trying to understand community sentiments around additional requirements over and above that. So PCDC could, so staff is going to be kind of presenting what is the wildfire resiliency code, and then coming up with some ways to solicit feedback. So could either invite you all to that meeting to kind of get an intro to that code during that night, if that works for you. If not, I'm happy to also bring this topic up at a workshop just for PCDC to kind of do a deep dive, and I'm open to either one.
Do
Whatever.
we have a date or no?
October 30th is the town hall. We could either do it, we have an agenda item calendared for October 27th. So I'm happy to meet with you all on that night and give you an update during your regular meeting. I'm seeing headlines for that.
That'd be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that way I think it can be a little more tailored to you and have the opportunity for more dialogue. So great. So, I can also bring an update, just more things related to wildfire mitigation on that night. Go ahead.
To what extent is Boulder County involved in the discussions so far, and to what extent do we think they should be involved in the strategic planning?
So a lot in some ways and not much in others. So as you know, Boulder County in 2022, I think they passed the sales tax for the wildfire mitigation fund to start generating revenue. They've been funneling funds through the Wildfire Partners Program, which rests in the county. Through that fund, they're collecting millions of dollars annually, and we have benefited from that locally, either through grants for mitigation on private or public property, or for the $500 mitigation grants for private property owners that the town has matched and doubled. So to that degree, I would say they're great partners. I think the conversations we've had with some members of the county, in terms of helping us implement our own wildfire resiliency code, that's not something that we have seen. They have capacity to help us support. That being said, I think over time, I think we're also, all the communities right now are just trying to figure out how to implement this code, getting our arms around it. So I am hopeful that over the next coming years, there could be some grant support through that county fund that could help us with our strategies, or maybe we, some of their mitigation grants for private property owners could connect a little more strongly to the code. But I think a little bit of that is still to be determined. I know, do you want to maybe chat a little bit about the conversation that was happening at the board level?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we thought was a pivotal question that should be taken to the community, but also reviewed by the commission and by the board, is the degree to which the recommendations that are requirements in the code for new construction might also apply to existing structures. So I think that's what you're.
Yeah, that's what thank you for being clear, yeah.
So that's a real question for us, is whether some subset of what would be required for new structures also ought to be applied to everything that exists today. City
For
of Boulder,
example.
City of Boulder is struggling with that same question.
Right.
So we're trying to listen to how other communities are making that call, and we also make that as probably question number one in that town hall, is to get people's tolerance for either resigning themselves to existing structures not being as protected as any of us would like, or requiring people to do some modest level of mitigation short of what would be a long list of things that a new construction would have to incorporate.
And that would be both residential and commercial. And to the same degree.
I think we're primarily talking about residential because there are different commercial codes that have very strong requirements internally in the structure, like for fire suppression, and the external mitigation factors are less significant for a commercial than they would for a much more scattered site of residential.
I agree, and I think that the types of mitigation that the board was thinking about were more in terms of site maintenance and landscaping. So maybe limbing up trees, removal of junipers, keeping flammable objects 5 feet or more away from the home. So not necessarily requiring folks to replace their roofs ahead of maybe when they needed to, or siding, or potentially fencing. But I think there's additional conversation happening at the board level. Should that apply everywhere in town, or should it apply in kind of strategic locations in town?
Yeah.
I think we also have to pair that conversation with resources and staffing. And if it doesn't come with a strong education component, we don't want to be perceived as looking in people's backyards. And, it's a complicated conversation. And I think there's a lot of pros and cons, and
And there is some discussion, you mentioned staffing, about where enforcement should lie, whether
Yep.
that's strictly within the town, whether it's strictly within the fire district and fire marshal's position, or if it's some shared responsibility, and if so, how the funding of that shared role might play out. I can tell you,
Yes.
as we're having some conversations with fire chief about this, the district doesn't want to go it alone on this. They're open to doing something with the town, but would prefer not to be the one authority trying to tell everybody what to do.
And I think we agree. I think it's a better message if the town and the fire district are aligned in our understanding and desire and ability to enforce. We've had some high level conversations as staff between the fire district and the town, but we certainly need to do a lot more, I think, because, and now it's budget time. But,
For both.
for both, so, yeah. I think there's one argument to be made additionally that is, let's adopt the WRC as is. Let's get our arms around what that code entails. And through that, do a lot of education in 2026. And then maybe implement, once we have a good understanding of how the code actually works. And implement it and administer it, then maybe add a second layer on top of it after that. So that's another option too.
Yeah, cause like Boulder's pretty much denser than us in a lot of places, and I know, and I just like the whole city of Boulder, I mean, I don't know anything what the new code is like, but. Is there different layers and things?
So there's a map. that
And
gets-
then and where your fire risk and areas that are included maybe, and what level expected of,
Mhm.
okay,
And Boulder has been doing WUI codes for decades now, a
Okay.
couple decades now, some degree of, kind of gradual increase in their
yeah,
ability to require retroactivity. The state did include a map that identified risk. I think there's a lot of varying opinions about how accurate that map is when you get into the built environment. But for Lyons, it's easy because the map covers the entirety of Lyons at the same risk.
Mhm.
The entire town is mapped at the same risk. So I think other communities are having a different conversation around. Do we like the map? Do we want to change the map? How are we going to remap it? Do we want to increase the risk? Do we want to argue it should be different? So I think when we don't have that.
But if there's somewhat more focus on residential areas because they're the wilderness interface,
Yep,
literally.
Yep.
And in many cases, the interfaces with Boulder County property.
Yep.
yeah,
And the Boulder County property, since it's not occupied
Mhm.
and is probably denser fuel wise,
mm,
it seems that somehow that should be a part of the strategy.
I don't disagree with that.
I'm thinking, I'm wondering if, cause I remember, I read the memo, the fire department is creating the community-wide fire, what's that called?
Community
Yeah.
wildfire protection.
And I just remember when I read it, they, created it in like 2012 last or 2000, I don't know, it was a while, maybe even longer ago. They did call for like a fire break to be made in that area. Well, when we had the Cowwood fire, the fire district made that fire break, that was already, I don't know, I mean, maybe you don't have to make it that far ahead of time, but that was something that was called for in that plan. I don't know if, I don't think it had
Well,
been made.
Boulder County has updated their CWPP.
And that's just saying,
Yep.
that where I'm going with that, those types of things should help address. Like the interface between residential and some open space, yeah, I don't know, and maybe, I'm wondering, or is it being considered, that's part of what that's where I'm going with that.
No, I think that's super fair, and the Boulder County updated their CWPP, was it adopted last year or in 2023? Do you happen to remember? I think it might have been finalized in 23. Lyons Fire District is in the process of updating theirs kind of as we speak. You probably remember seeing some of those open houses. So to some degree, they will make recommendations, but that is, kind of like it still then will require funding
Yeah,
and
true,
policy
yeah.
change. And the county lands are super complicated because, I guess I'm more familiar with them on the plains side where they have ag leases that limit.
Pacific conservation easements, they're
Conservation.
different owners,
easements,
yeah.
it's that maintenance,
yeah.
it's a staffing thing, but, I can bring a lot more information back on the 27th and provide links for you all to the county CWPP Wildfire Partners Program. And I can do an overview of the WRC code. You guys will kind of be my dry run then, which is great, thank you, before I do the town hall on the 30th. And we have time then, I think, before we get the code in effect to iterate and get your feedback to help advise the board, because I think this is just high priority and needs some work.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this topic?
The only other thing, you mentioned that there is fundamentally a difference between residences that are really on the interface and those that are right in the middle of downtown.
Yeah.
The CWPP meetings or listening sessions that the district has held have been pretty sparsely attended when they've been held in town at Station 1. When they've been held in Station 2 up on Blue Mountain, they've been very broadly attended. There were 3 times as many people up there, 100 people up there when they held a meeting up there. So there is a different level of sentiment that the district, which comprises Lyons and lots more, faces when they're trying to sort this out for what's really urban and what's a little less urban.
Yeah.
Well, case in point would be the Martin property, which is now in town.
Yep.
But prior to that, it was Boulder County property, and talk about risk that needed to be mitigated. I mean, that was a great example that, the town of Lyons would need in that kind of situation. To me, the town of Lyons almost needs the authority to say that property needs to be mitigated.
Yeah.
Well, so the Martin parcel, we do own it now, and we did get a grant, that property, I believe, in the last month, maybe even less than a month, I think, has been mitigated to some degree. So I think the other thing would be helpful for me to bring to you is some information from Dave Cosgrove's team, the Parks and Public Works Director, in terms of what grants we've gotten from the county, what work that has covered. And then we're putting in a board request on the 20th to get approval to apply for the next round of funding through the Strategic Fuels Mitigation Grant through Wildfire Partners. But I think it'd be good just to give you all an overview of what efforts the town's making, where we see some gaps, and then specifically around implementation of the WRC code.
But we haven't found a way to be successful in pressing the county
Nope.
and open space to do more for their fuel rich.
Yeah, to me, that's a gap.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I wonder, I mean, I imagine City of Boulder must be, I mean, they must be dealing with those issues too, so with the, and I'd be curious to know what kind of.
Every community in Boulder County, not every, communities that I've been involved with, this is, been remaining, we've had ongoing conversations in the city of Louisville and part of a separate team, Superiors.
Just to say Superior,
Yeah, after Marshall Fire, so the Marshall Fire communities. But I think because of that, there's been a lot of conversations with county about like, hey, and then to what degree they're limited by either funding or. There's also some just community values differences, right? So I think sometimes, the open space values for some of the policies they have, in a lot of ways, they're in alignment with wildfire mitigation, but to some degree they're in conflict. So I think we're also in the little bit of a just trying to turn the train in this area. I'm glad you guys are passionate about it. This is one of my personal areas of interest, so I would love to dive into this.
Yeah, no, like Marshall, when it came through, it burned entire, fields in seconds going through. I mean, we love we have great open space, but they can burn fast
now.
Yeah, they can burn fast and quickly, and
It's a threat. It's not always just an asset. Jen, do you
It'll
have
probably
anything?
come up, but I think this is really important because it almost overlaps with housing, the cost of housing with
Yes.
insurance.
yeah.
And it's just, I think my policy went up $1,000 and I can't even get competitive bids. And I called, they won't, other
That's large.
places won't. They said, I'm sorry, we won't provide you with homeowners insurance. So You know, I think it will come up, and
Mhm.
it is almost like a housing economic development overlap.
Even in our neighborhood, even our neighborhood, we're a little bit protected too, yeah, cause we live in Lions Valley Park, and I mean, so we're not quite, we're not like in Blue Mountain, for example, so, but we're.
Jen, do you want to add something?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So I'm an ex-firefighter. I'm retired. Done a lot of work on all of these things with professions and houses. So for me, seeing what happened with Boulder County post Marshall fires, and I had to evacuate 2 professional sites then. My next door neighbor over there on Welch Drive got one of the grant people to come out and do the walk around of her house and wrote a big report that's very telling. And I think that is where this group with the PCDC and all of our other groups need to realize what kind of a quirky place we live, because even she published that to all of us neighbors and we all pushed back like on a lot of it. Like, no way, man, I'm not tearing out my, whatever kind of fence it is or putting in a metal gate. I mean, there was a ton of things in there that even I, as a firefighter, was like, well, that's debatable. Well, that would even help your house, right? So I think we're going to get into some squirrely things with that with our townsfolk. And that's why your statement about the education piece is going to be very, very important to say, what are you getting? What's the bang for the buck? Tim and I are also, we just got notified by our insurer that they're going to come do a walk around, I think this week while I'm gone. And so he was wondering, well, is there something we should change up? And I said, no, because I think we're safe, so I'm not going to mess with anything. Let's just see what they say, right? And we're not really the urban interface where we live, but we're not the wildfire interface either. So I think it's going to be tricky rolling some of these things out to townsfolk that already are living in their spaces and not building. I think that's going to be a very tricky part.
Hey, Jen,
Slow that roll.
yeah, to say, Jen, we had wildfire partners come out to our house, but several of our neighbors. Greg's done it. He's on my street. Keith and Sarah next door to me, and I've had it done at my house too. And so it was like one of my next door neighbor, Keith, they took out the section of the fence, like metal and what,
Yep.
and replaced it. Actually, he found metal flashing and put it around the wooden fences and we were in agreement. That's how the water marshal fire law would spread. It would spread along wooden fences. And then that's how they would just connect and catch another, so that's why they weren't saying like an entire metal fence, just the size 5 feet next to your house.
Yeah.
And in my case, when they did, the same person who did the review of Keith and Sarah next door to me and did the same on my house, she recommended that on Keith and Sarah's, their side where ours two is connected, that they could remove theirs, but she didn't have a problem with ours. I can't remember what it was, the reason why, but I had to do with the fact that, well, we have rock all around there. We have rock, and we have a lot of things that she was like, think of how an ember travels. Like,
Right.
think about how embers, the way the ember travels, like you have a lot of rock around here, you have mostly rock. I'm more concerned that you have, feel like twigs, like, the way, what you use to start a fire and when you're camping or something, that's the type of stuff you need to clean out but she didn't actually, in my case, she didn't even actually recommend metal fence because we have so much rock around. We already have almost a 5 foot of rock, that was created when we built our house and not doing anything, kept it that way, and now it's to our advantage. But yeah, I do understand, yeah, because there's a lot of things like, I think I look at our neighbors, he like cleaned out underneath this tree. He cut out his entire juniper tree. He did require some things, like he put a metal, like, there's a metal rim around the bottom of the house. Like, I think my house already has it, your house is, I think might have it. Some houses weren't built with it, but mine is a little bit newer, only like by like a year, but for some reason mine has the metal trimmer on the edge on the outside so that I didn't have to do that. I don't know.
good programs out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of programs, yeah, what I'm saying is, I don't give, yeah, we maybe decide what's a priority or what's important, I mean, the metal fences is a big one, and I know that for sure, because we're all interconnected in our communities, or wooden fences, that, yeah, so I'm sorry, I went
No,
on.
no, you're good. I mean, I think there's, and Marshall Fire spread for a lot of reasons. I think there's been a lot of publications and
Yeah,
stuff that,
yeah.
in some cases it was those, in some cases it was embers, and some it was just the heat from the net that stops over.
Yeah,
That's
That was terrifying. We could all agree on that.
yeah, worst case scenario. All right, well,
Okay,
acknowledging we've got a lot of work to do on this one, let's move on, maybe to our next topic area. This is not advancing, there we go. Let me make sure it didn't go too far, okay. So these next two, are, I kind of categorize them as redevelopment and infill related to economic development and housing. So I kind of pulled together, policies and work that are related to barriers that are within our code, or kind of like code evaluation and code alignment. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I won't necessarily read these. I'm just still kind of getting my arms around the codes we have in place. And overall, I think our code structure is good, not great, but I've certainly seen way worse. So I think that's a good thing for Lions. But I do think it might be good just to talk about, to what degree we think our codes are barriers, with your perspectives, particularly now, maybe once we get through, I would maybe recommend we get through 402 Main, maybe get through the next zoning application for the PUD for the Eastern Corridor. So kind of actually administer these codes a little bit over the next coming months. And then think about, kind of where there's opportunities and if the codes are the barriers or not, right? It might not be that our codes are actually the problem, as you know. So I'm happy to pause here and get your thoughts on that.
I have a thought, but because just looking at the way things have worked over a period of years, it seems to me that in the ideal, which we probably could not afford, we do a thorough process improvement.
I have a whole
process.
slide on that, process improvements.
Okay,
So yes, I totally agree there. And we can, yeah, that's, I think, the next slide.
and it would be, it's almost like thinking through the efficient process and then aligning the code to the combination of what does the town want.
Okay.
And how effective is the process?
So we can skip ahead, I think, based on that, procedural improvements. So within the recommendations or the policies for PCDC, there were 4 that I think directly align with kind of procedural improvements, which then could improve outcomes for both economic development and housing. So some of it is just kind of publicize and create better documentation for the codes and processes we already have. And then customer service, and then building codes, which we're relatively up to date on our building codes, and we'll be talking about going to the 24s at the same time we think about adopting the wildfire resiliency code. And so I agree with you. I think there's huge opportunities in this area just from a better communications. Couple different things that is happening kind of behind the scenes that will help inform this work. One is, you probably recall, Prop 123. And for us to remain compliant for Prop 123, we have to have the fast track path for certain types of affordable housing developments. Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership got a grant for a consultant team that's comprised of Clarion and Associates, and then Eco Northwest, who's kind of a housing economics consultant firm, and Clarion is kind of a code expert. So they're actually, I've been working with them over the past couple months, having dialogue around what are our codes, where do I think our barriers are, where do we not have barriers, where could we improve things. So they've given us some preliminary recommendations, and then I've given them some feedback on that. So we're pretty close, I think, to getting some final recommendations, which I think will inform that process, but for us, I feel like we kind of take those recommendations and apply them to all of the processes. I think we have some philosophical discussions around, do we want to require public hearings for certain types of applications or do we not? Because that's a procedural barrier in some people's opinions. And then secondly, ADUs, as you all know, we've adopted the new ADU code in June. I have not had capacity to put together better documentation and publicize that new code. However, last night at HHSC, Trustee Dati and I have been going to a housing group that's meeting collaboratively at the county, and all the county electeds have set the goal that all of the town staffs will have ADU kind of fairs or open houses sometime in like the next 6 months. And so we're kind of working together collectively on coming up with better messaging on ADUs, but as a result of that, it's going to improve all our own messaging around ADUs. So I'm gearing up for, and would love PCDC to, you know, kind of have a role at least in kind of reviewing some of this before we go live. Probably the second half of January. And beginning to communicate. Here's our new code. Here's what this means for you. How much we've simplified the code and expanded the code for ADUs. So I think we can also lean on that process improvement, at least for ADUs. In addition to that, though, I want to hear kind of maybe your other thoughts where you've seen challenges, either personally or from what you've heard or observed from the development review process.
Not here, but, you know, I think that a lot of municipalities are looking at the fast track as just 100% of the project. Capital A affordable, like deed restricted or something.
Yeah,
And
the threshold to have to meet to do fast track's pretty high.
so I love the idea of just making that universal if we have the capacity or some threshold as an incentive. And then just on the ADU stuff, is that group talking about all the municipalities in Boulder County, like pre-approving certain plans so that you kind of incentivize the factories to make Sears Roebuck ADU and which would make it more affordable for people.
So
Right now,
yes,
the cost of building an ADU is.
had conversations with Mike Koenig at Studio Shed, and they have they have a lot of communities that will pre-approve their plans.
Yeah.
And I've let them know, like, we could do that now. I don't have anything that says you can't apply for that. I think to some degree, he and I haven't spent time looking at our code and looking at our lots here in town to understand which of his plans would be most optimal and highly likely to be used. And then I think there's also a messaging, because a pre-approved plan is really the building. It still will require professional input on utilities and a foundation and site layout and zoning analysis. So I want to make sure, as we talk about pre-approved plans, that there still is some.
There's a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, there's still some degree of site component to that. That's one of the, I think that is something we've talked about. The other thing I want to do too, in terms of development review, is we've got kind of 3 developments that are actively getting worked on right now: the Tipo annexation, 402 Main, and then the PUD approval out on the east corridor. Once we get through that process, I would love to have either myself or another member who's impartial kind of interview them to understand more about how was your experience, where could it be better, where did we do great, just to try and get some of that feedback. Yeah. It's good, so.
We did spend a fair amount of time several years ago at the board level, to pass municipal code related to tiny homes on wheels.
Yes, I need to get the word out on that for the ADUs too.
Yeah, so, to me, there seemed to be some promise there, and it just hasn't developed at all. And I don't know if it's because the popularity of tiny homes has passed its prime, or people just aren't aware of it? Is it a communication thing? What made it be so interesting at one point and then almost not mentioned in the last couple of years?
My outside observation, I think, is Lyons is super unique in that you actually allow tiny homes to be lived in without being on a permanent foundation and meeting all the building codes. I think a lot of the communities say, if you want to live in a tiny home, it needs to meet all building codes and be on a permanent foundation and be permanently connected to utilities, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I think there's some degree of education and awareness that Lyons actually has an allowance for that. But the thing I don't know, which you all might know better, is what are the barriers to ADU development in Lyons? Like, is it financial? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it lack of desire? Is it lack of lending? Is it, I don't know if there's barriers, if we have a role in them.
But I've heard over and over again, this cost. And I'm not sure that the message about how tiny homes on wheels, for example,
Mhm.
would mitigate costs.
Yeah,
Because we already have the policies around taps for
yeah,
water and sewer and, that are pretty benign for
Yeah.
for somebody to develop ADUs. And, but the notion of putting together what are the incentives and what are the disincentives, and are there incentives that we want to enhance?
Yep.
And are there disincentives that we want to make sure people are aware of,
Yeah.
for one thing, and then also to make sure that people there's no misinformation around the disincentives.
absolutely. One example that I really want to highlight during this open house, if people show up and are interested, is we had a homeowner recently since we adopted the new code. All they had to do to get a certificate of occupancy to permit what was already existing in their basement was interconnect their smoke alarms and their CO detectors and post a half address on their house. They got a building permit. We came in, so we did a courtesy walkthrough in advance of a building permit with the building official, which I think is a great way to just say, we need to do this, everything else looks great, egress was good. They had everything, they applied for a permit. The resident actually just installed the interconnected smoke alarms, we tested them and they have a CO for an ADU, I think cost them less than $1,000, probably less than $500. So I think because of the new code that doesn't require fire separation, and this was a basement walkout, so it was a walkout basement that already kind of had a, little half kitchen.
Right.
That was all they had to do.
Mhm.
And I think if I had to guess, there would be a lot of other properties in Lyons that it really could be that easy.
Yeah, it's almost like putting together an example
Yes,
that people could relate to.
yep. So. But I hear you, we need to make sure the incentives match the problem. Or they relate to the problem, if there's a way to get folks over that, and I think we're gonna have to explore that. Any thoughts from you on the board level on procedure or? Thoughts on this?
The only echo that I hear from the board is this larger question of the focus on housing. That there is this doubt, I think, that comes and goes and waves in the board about whether we should go to great lengths to make it easier to build. And if so, whether we should focus on infill, or if we should just generally watch for opportunities, be opportunistic, as they say sometimes. And then try to get out of the way when people want to do things. So should we try to fix something which may or may not be broken, or should we watch for chances to help people do what they've already decided they want to do?
That's a good summary. I agree with that. And I think it will be really interesting when the board talks about their goals again for the next term with this new seated board where housing lands. Because I agree, I think there's some mixed opinions in the community about how much effort we need to spend on this topic.
Yeah, the question, because I've heard that repeatedly, and what I don't hear enough of is an understanding of what value more population might bring. I've heard what the negatives might be. More traffic.
Well, more people
And
are trying to drive up sales tax revenue, I don't know, yeah, trying to,
Mhm.
I mean, how is it? Yeah, are you talking about people living here, trying to capture people?
people being here who
Full time.
are both customers and potential workers.
Yeah, that's just it, I mean, you know, well, I guess we've got a doctor back in town now, but we could keep the doctor's office for, the problem is that to become an area where you can really get a sizable sales tax revenue requires lines to be a whole lot bigger and have a lot more population than we probably would ever.
Maybe, I don't know
Yeah.
that anybody's looked at that tipping point, I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Okay.
I don't know how,
Yeah,
I don't know how.
yeah, okay, that's,
I actually don't know if we're far apart or not.
yeah, and then, I mean, like say if the hotel does finally get built, they're, it provide a destination aspect to the town of, that where we could specifically get more in sales tax revenues or things like that, or hotel lodging revenues, but I,
So I think procedural improvements, I guess, my recommendation is, hopefully let staff kind of continue to work on the Prop 123 fast track, what we learned from that. And then work on the ADU, at least messaging and webpage and communications. And I think we'll learn a lot that we can then easily transfer, in terms of templates and guidance, for other procedures, if you're okay, if that's. And then I can lean on you guys for some feedback as we develop those.
That's good.
Yeah, maybe just ask if there's, if there are opportunities either through the Department of Local Affairs or somewhere to get a better understanding of to what degree does size matter for a town.
To attract a certain type of, like a grocery store or to like, yeah.
Yeah, are there stepwise kind of observations that have been held that if if you're at 1,000, is it better or worse to go to 2,000? Is it better or worse for kind of 2,000 to go to 3,000?
I think that's an interesting question, that I would love to maybe explore.
And I'm not sure, I mean,
Yeah.
I probably personally tend toward thinking that some more customers and workers would be good for the town, but I don't know for sure. I
Right.
don't know, I don't,
What is cost of service? What is long-term infrastructure maintenance, right?
Right.
Like, what are the pros and cons in
Right.
terms of all of that?
right,
I don't know that we have a strong history of fiscal analysis with new development here in Lyons, like that takes, kind of consultant resources typically. We tend to be, I think, more opportunistic as a opportunity approaches Lyons, we tend to kind of, I think, react on that. I don't know how strategic we've been in terms of like long-term fiscal policy, related to growth and change. I think that's super fascinating work.
I wonder,
For opportunities to explore that.
I wonder like a Netherland, like kind of nearby, of course, they just have that fire, but it's a town, some of the characteristics where people, that, come and visit but they also, they're a small town, and are they actually,
Twice
It's
or
more like a
they're
30
twice the
minutes
size
to
of
get to a grocery store. We're never gonna get a grocery store.
yeah,
We
exactly.
have to do like a little market, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
have a beautiful market. Let's just keep it open.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
That's super fair.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Let's just keep Indian Bites open and the new wine bar, like,
Yeah,
I think that would be really great if we weren't always, a new restaurant comes in and we're all like, please, please, please stay open.
Well, yeah, we don't have I mean, even like,
preserving too, I don't see preserving the housing that we have.
You're right. I don't recall seeing a lot of policies.
And I
around
don't
that.
know if that's just a miss or what, but it's so much easier to keep what you have.
Well, I think that will probably
Add
come
more.
in a little bit to the conversation around the moratorium and the historic preservation. You know, I know that
Yeah.
conversation has been centered around downtown, but
Yeah.
in my mind, they're very connected.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, let's maybe go back up to this slide. I just don't want to ignore it if you guys do want to touch on things here. I think this just, I think is kind of better understanding of our barriers. I don't know, for one, that we have capacity or resources, right, in the next 6 months to probably do a real deep dive here, but I think it's certainly something that doing the procedural improvements will help us inform.
Yeah.
Like, let's remove some of the easier barriers and we can see if that loosens things, if at all, or if we
Yeah.
need to go into this next step.
Yeah, and let these 3 projects kind of help us study this.
That's kind of my initial thought, if you all are comfortable with that. Okay. Housing policies and partnerships, we talked a lot about this, during the July meeting.
Can
And
I, sorry,
then-
before you move on.
Yeah,
Can I also suggest that we, if we haven't done it already, do a little bit of an after action on the developments that we've had?
yes,
So I might have an idea or two. I'm sure some came out of Summit. I'm sure some are coming out of other things that people have done.
you know, one thing we've done in
Probably did some
Yeah.
things right and maybe some things didn't go quite right, even on the hotel discussion.
yes,
We could learn a lot from all of those.
I love that idea.
I think what I've done with other planning commissions is, you could do it every year, probably less here, but I think after a few of these get approved, potentially even built, let's do a walking tour. Let's look at the
Mhm.
plans, let's walk the space. What did we miss? What were we not thinking of? How is connectivity? How does this feel? How can this influence code changes? Because I agree with you, like an after action of, what do our codes say and what did this result in and where did we hit and where did we miss?
Yeah, for
Super
example,
helpful.
comparing
Summit's a
the-
great
the
opportunity for that.
development of the pole barn. The format
Uh-huh,
and the building on,
Riverbend, Riverbend?
What?
Riverbend?
Yeah, the Riverbend
Yeah.
development. The development of Riverbend is beautiful, it's
Yep.
huge, it has huge economic opportunity for the town. And it went fairly smoothly. I don't recall any big hubbub about it.
Okay.
It went nicely and, whereas the pole barn, it's a nice addition to the
Mhm.
town, certainly. But the process that it was forced to go through was very, very grueling,
was that a political problem or a code problem?
all of those things. It wasn't so much political, and there weren't people opposed to it.
Okay,
It was just, uh, they had to go back and redo, they had to go back and redo, they had to go back and redo.
I
And there were
do not know
things-
the backstory on that one, so I'll
Yeah,
have to get my.
There were
armor
a
on it.
couple things, for example, at the last minute, the fire department was concerned about the bridge and equipment being able to get back there and the
Mm.
location of a fire hydrant.
Yeah, that's true,
And
yeah.
if those things had been known up front,
Of course.
it could have been much more easily taken care of and it would
Yeah.
have gone much more smoothly and wouldn't have had to go back. And I'm not blaming the fire department, it was the process that was the issue. Of not bringing the fire department in and, you know,
In soon enough,
and going through, what are all the things you better consider before you start all this?
got it.
You know, to minimize your, investment in consultants and lawyers and
Yeah,
redoing and surveys and.
that's a good lesson learned for sure.
Yeah, that comparison, I think, would be a pretty good one, pretty instructive.
Okay, well, maybe, in the spring, we can revisit this and just, you know, when the weather's nice again. We have a little bit more daylight in the evening hour. We can, you know, maybe do a tour of some of the existing developments and then do maybe a little bit of a deep dive back here together. You know, where did we hit and where did we miss and what lessons do we need to learn? Because we don't have a lot of opportunities for lessons, you know, Lions isn't, we're not building new buildings every week, so. Let's definitely make the most of the opportunities we can have.
One thing on that is, I know after they built the pole barn, I haven't really heard things. Now they have their events inside the pole barn, and I'm hoping they have the same effect with the river bend, the new development, that people are less upset by noise. Because cause we don't, you know, prior to the pole barn being built, you know, I know, well, you might not have been there soon enough, but since my house backs to but well, not to the river, I used to have a patio and I can.
You used to be able to hear it.
Yeah, very well, so, and, on my neighbor, we used to talk about, it, we never really complained about it, we understand it was kind of part of the town and, but I haven't really been hearing it since after they built the pole barn, so I mean,
It's been,
yeah, so I'm hoping that maybe the people who are living around the riverbank are kind of having just some experience, now they have a nice indoor facility to be able to do
Yeah.
things, I mean, the option to like play music indoors and soundproof that they shouldn't have some of those noise issues that we've had in the past. Yeah.
sorry, so. Going on to, I think, housing policies and partnerships, you know, some of this you've already done, you know, expanded ADU allowances. Some of this we haven't done, and that's thinking about like broadening the allowance for, you know, maybe not just single unit zoning, but duplexes, triplexes in our single unit neighborhoods. I don't know that Lions is ready to have that conversation or not, but I think, so I would lean on you a little bit to know if you feel like we're right for that conversation. You know, we don't have design standards for single unit homes. I know there's a lot of pros and cons, and some people want them when they don't like what's going in next door. But on the flip side, they don't want them for their own property. So what is your appetite for diving into some of these topics in the next year?
Okay, can I just ask a quick?
Yes.
So let's just say that that I don't live in a nature, which I do, and I somehow,
Yeah.
now my neighborhood, is zoned for a duplex.
Uh-huh.
I'd have to tear down my single family home and build a duplex, or I could add on to it, like what,
No,
how does
so,
it work?
yeah,
What-
functionally, most communities, when they say they are eliminating single family zoning. Nobody has to single family zoning, single family uses are still allowed. You've just
Yeah.
added the opportunity for a duplex or a triplex. But it doesn't force anybody
Right,
to
but if
add
I
a
want
duplex.
it,
But if they wanted to, they could either add on or scrape and redevelop to build a duplex. But nobody would have to get rid of. I mean, I can't imagine Lions adopting.
no, I
a
understand
policy.
that, but like, what would actually come from that?
So it depends on the market and the land values and, you know, looking at this in communities where you see a lot of change, like neighborhoods in Denver, you know, probably 10 or 15 years ago, they updated their zoning code and there were neighborhoods where, you know, 15 years ago, you saw entirely single family homes. And now it's just, you know, block upon
Yeah.
block of scraped duplexes. And then other neighborhoods, where I've worked in Superior, there were neighborhoods that were destroyed by Marshall Fire and the zoning allowed duplexes, but the market still built single family homes. So a lot of it's just I don't think it's inevitable that every property would quickly turn into a duplex. But I don't have a solid understanding of, would want to do a little bit of a market analysis with a housing expert to look at kind of cost of construction, potential resale, and what folks could realize from an increase in zoning in our typical neighborhoods. That's a hard question to answer, and I don't have a good understanding of Blue Lions economics. I mean, Trustee Williams, you might
Well,
have a little bit of insight on this as well, given your experience.
Go ahead, Barney.
I was just gonna say, as a practical matter,
Uh-huh.
there are two categories. Infill and
And new, Yep.
annexation.
good point.
And annexation wise, it's really only the eastern corridor. I mean, we talk every now and then about, South St. Vrain and
Yeah.
North St. Vrain and.
Those are largely developed, and then the northwest side is fraught with differences of
Yeah.
opinion.
There are only a handful at most of undeveloped properties in town, and I don't know if there may be a couple that are amenable to, multi-family
Mhm.
structures. So having a strategy for that is, to me, it's almost opportunistic. You have to look at each individual one and
Mhm.
now you can't do and shouldn't do, spot.
Yep, spot zoning.
Annexation, so if you do, in effect, you say, well. The code, housing code can accommodate. In certain circumstances, things that fit these
Mhm.
remaining properties. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but it may take some creative thinking that says. We're primarily a single family home community,
Mhm.
but with these criteria, you could consider, if there's not overwhelming opposition, you could consider multifamily dwellings within.
I think you're right. Go ahead.
Well, no, I would say, having lived in Denver, owning a condo in Capitol Hill, had lived in more modern and, had historic houses right next door to me, in my building, then you have new built apartment buildings being built, and you have duplexes and
Mhm.
row homes, of course, it's, of course, the market will drive it, but, you'll still have a public hearing where people will come in and give their input, just like you had a public hearing for the property you were having there. In the case of like say a place, Capitol Hill in Denver, they, at one point it was 150 years ago, it was all historic homes. They, being close to the Capitol and change and being, streets going from dirt to paved, and now we're talking about, we're not allowing duplexes and apartments, I guess, of course, the inevitable change that, well, the closest to downtown and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, even seeing new things being built, and I guess it is, I guess it's done on a lot by lot basis and proposal. I guess you do have input in design, because design guidelines, you have input, like, yeah, I mean, like, like the row homes, I would like walk by all the time on my walks around there, but I mean, they're nice, beautiful brick row homes in the historic style, that even though they were higher density, they did provide, but they were designed to try and fit in with the neighborhood. I mean, I guess, I don't know if any of this is making sense.
No,
But-
it
Yeah.
sounds like neighborhood context.
Yeah, context and opportunity, that's an area where, 150 years ago, you had a horse and buggy on a dirt road, and now, yeah, exactly, but.
I can tell you the little bit I've looked at so R1 zoning covers like Lions Valley Park, it covers Eagle Canyon, it covers Stone Mountain, it also covers the old part of Lions. I think the R1 zoning. The properties, the phone calls I have gotten for R1 zoning lots in Old Town, the zoning doesn't match very well with what is built.
Okay,
And I think it might match what has gotten built under it. But I don't think it necessarily matches the historic context of what we have. And I think there might be an opportunity to kind of differentiate a zoning overlay. Or better at least tailor our zoning to either facilitate reasonable development in our old town. So that you don't need variances.
yeah.
And differentiate our new neighborhoods from our historic neighborhood
Yeah, I
a little
mean,
bit in our zoning.
Like the Habitat for Humanity houses, those are all those townhouses, that's infill and they're townhouses and they fit in, it's more denser part of town than say, like
Yeah.
Valley Park, where we have a 25-foot setback
What are your, I mean, you built in Old Town.
and.
Yeah, I guess intuitively, I ask myself how many new homes I can think of in downtown. So how many times people have started over, where they might have started over and put in a duplex instead of a single family home. And there just are so few new homes right in the middle of Woodlands.
Yeah, right.
Just a handful. So it's hard to imagine more than a handful getting scraped and turned into duplexes. And while I'm all for density, scraping cool, modest homes to get to a duplex in a town that doesn't seem headed that direction, doesn't sound all that productive. In my case, I sort of dodged it because I was working with a property that was already entitled for 6, had a history of 9, and I never had any intention of going over 9. So
Right.
it wasn't that hard to get neighborhood support for something that included a duplex, a threeplex, and a fourplex, albeit on just 2 properties.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's a very common
No.
starting point.
Is it fair to say there's agreement in the comp plan? It seems like there's practical agreement that the Eastern Corridor is like our shot in the near future. And that zoning there is
yeah.
gonna be different than most of the zoning around the rest of town.
I think that's fair.
The tricky part has come in politically, if you will.
Yeah.
That people worry that what if we say anything aggressive in terms of density in the Eastern Corridor, that somehow applies to any property that could be annexed ever in the future somewhere else around town. And so there's concern about the effect of making broad decisions for the Eastern Corridor that become precedent, if you will.
Right.
Not that we need to at all. It could be very specific to the properties that we're talking about in the Eastern Corridor. And I do think that if people did have the assurance that we're making these decisions for these properties, and they don't apply to any other things, if there's not something coming in the future that they might object to elsewhere in town, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of opposition.
Yeah.
The first time we after we acquired the property out there, the first concepts seemed to be reasonably well accepted. And then the first things the development didn't proceed, and then we get into the financial issues, and then one thing after another, the pandemic and financial issues, and then for whatever reason, there did seem to be the development of some concerns that the focus on affordable housing was pervasive and would apply in more circumstances than at least had ever been actively considered by the town that I was ever aware.
Jen, do you want to give you the opportunity to chime in here?
Yeah, I think what you guys are all talking about is so relevant and thoughtful. And those are our challenges, like how we communicate these things. I know my neighborhood, you're not just going to find a bunch of new tiny homes or ADUs or people who want to make duplexes. But after the flood, there were places in our neighborhood right there. I walk by them every day where I said over and over again, why didn't we make that into a duplex? Why didn't we make that into a triplex back when we had the opportunity? But the landowners weren't in that mode yet. And now I think it's too late, but opportunities exist.
Opportunities exist. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's just, I think we're going to see more of that with the Eastern Corridor and the backfill stuff. And then careful on the annexation, of course, because Julie's not there tonight, is she? Because she'd be chiming in right now about that. And I love what Barney was asking about the kind of the cost basis and the long-term, like what is the action plan? And it's all in our heads again now because our friends in Net just lost 20 businesses. So, you know, if you ever played one of those old video games from the past, the Sim City, how many
Yeah.
McDonald's can we support? How many grocery stores? How many houses do we need before they all burn down? It's a weird dynamic.
All right, well, I'm gonna share my
Yeah,
screen.
I hear a lot of municipalities think of residential is like the property taxes don't cover the burden of.
Property taxes, no, the
Yeah.
cities don't get a lot.
They
from
do not.
property tax.
Well,
So-
I've always used the example, it used to be when I was getting my graduate degree 20 plus
Mhm.
years ago, I mean, we always used to use every dollar, you put in taxes and property taxes, you use $1.50 in services. So you have to make it up with sales. That used to be the general rule. I don't know.
It varies depending on the type of unit and
Yeah.
the income of the household, like, I
Yeah.
think, there's,
Yeah,
low density, single family development. In the long term, generally is a little more expensive for cities to maintain from the streets and utilities
Yeah,
perspective.
if you keep spreading out, you have to keep,
Like
yeah,
development cost per acre.
yeah, like you have to keep adding, sewer systems and things, yeah. So that,
But, on the flip side, higher income residents in those maybe larger single unit homes probably are spending more sales tax dollars in town or eating in the restaurants, so. I think now that we're also capturing a lot more online sales tax than we used to, there's. Generally in lines, I think our sales tax numbers have been fairly stable, or at least that's what we're projecting in the next few years for
It's
budget.
actually
purposes.
grown and fairly significantly over the past 10 years,
but,
quite significantly. A good portion of that is marijuana sales.
Yeah, which I think the state we're not gonna be collecting as much as we used to be able to.
is
Uh,
it, state rural laws are.
I think they're taking more of theirs back or something.
And when internet sales started to be taxed, so
That helped a lot.
that helped a lot. So because the town of Lyons, average income is so high, I mean, it's significant. There are a lot of wealthy people
Mhm.
here and a lot of near wealthy people here. And, so what we don't have enough of is people who will be customers almost all the time of local businesses. Because I think low income people tend to get some money, go by. And that was based on Medicaid research I did many, many years ago, may have changed on them, but, and workers to keep businesses open, things that people want to have available, like the market and restaurants, and even services, home services, home related services. We even at like the deputy sheriff level and the school teacher level, it's difficult to buy a home and live in Lyons.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can,
And but having people like that in town is
Yep.
good for the town.
Yep.
So it's not just, to me, does the property tax make up,
Right.
or not? It's a bigger picture.
To some degree, there's community value, even if it's not revenue generating value.
Right.
100%.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
okay, I'm gonna suggest maybe we go. So these are just some housing policy work. Again, we talked a lot about this back in July. I linked that memo. I think we've advanced a lot since the comp plan in 23 related to the 2024 housing futures work. So I don't know that we need to linger here, other than we just continue to kind of update and lean on that work. Do you agree?
I think we covered that in.
Yeah. Mobile home parks, there was one policy related to mobile home parks that I added here just as a little bit of an update for you, so you probably know, we have some existing mobile homes at the property at 224 Seward Street. PCHA recently acquired that property. And Lions, you know, for now, I think they're just looking at what is kind of the possibilities on the site, but I think they're very sensitive, as is town staff, the fact that we have long-term residents that have lived on these properties for a long time. I had the pleasure of meeting some of them when I went to their barbecue, kind of their BCHA intro barbecue, a month or so ago, and just, you know, what do they like about living there? And so I think BCHA would, you know, I think is evaluating opportunities, but just have to make sure that we provide stability for the folks that live there. A little side note, on the upcoming agenda on October 20th, you all know the affordable and attainable housing tax that Boulder County residents passed in 23 is finally generating revenue here in 2025. The county and the town are going to talk about the town accepting $900,000 through those tax funds. 700,000 again is working on the Carter Court lots, and $200,000 the town would then give back to BCHA for further exploration and work at 224 Seward. So we're actively, I think, kind of thinking about what's possible there. Any questions on this?
Well, I did have an observation.
Yeah.
That it's a little bit out of the box, I guess. The properties to the east of our property in the eastern corridor.
Shady Acres, is that what it's called?
Pardon?
Shady Lane? Shady Lane, sorry.
Is that on the north side? You mean on the north side of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Six, and east of the, probably the,
Yeah,
okay.
Is every now and then that's been talked about and as you know, Lions could acquire that and build houses. So annex it
Mhm.
and sponsor housing. The impact on the local economy, the availability of workers and sales tax, at least on property tax. The impact would be similar if Boulder County did it.
Yep. Yeah, the town doesn't necessarily have to be the developer.
Mhm.
Yep. I think for now, BCHA, so the way the funds get allocated is the city managers of all the communities, the smaller communities, are developing and understanding their potential pipeline and then kind of collectively deciding amongst all the small towns how to kind of divvy up that share. So I don't know that we have a willing property owner at this point in time, but that's, I don't have a good background on kind of status of likely redevelopment for that property now, but I
Boulder
agree.
County has been interested in,
Okay,
and they
All right.
wanted Lions to do it.
got it.
But then the question is, you know, is it really a high priority if Boulder County would be willing to do
I mean, we would need a development partner no matter what
it? Yeah.
for the
Does-
town to do it.
Does the county has its own affordable housing outside of the cities, since the incorporated cities, towns,
Yes,
that's where I'm
they have a
yeah,
much higher number for the Prop 123 than we do.
okay,
Based on their baseline numbers, so yeah, I mean, collectively, we all have the 12% goal.
okay,
You know, so across Boulder County, all the communities have agreed that we need 12% of our housing to be affordable. Boulder County, I think, has kind of their preference and their policy work is trying to make sure that county remains rural.
And that's where I'm going with
Development
it,
is
yeah.
happening in the communities, but it wouldn't preclude like targeted annexations.
well, it's
You
like
know,
the
areas that
adjacent,
make
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think the county itself is gonna be driving a lot of residential affordable housing development in county lands, but do you have more
No,
of that?
I was
or-
just gonna ask, so the 900,000
Yeah.
for that fund is just specifically for BCHA project?
Yes, so it's kind of a pass through. The money's getting collected by the county.
Got
It's getting allocated for development in Lions, and so Lions is gonna accept the funds and then pass them through to BCHA, the development arm for those funds.
To
should the board agree,
For 224 Seward right now,
or 224 Seward and Carter Court,
okay,
which we're still exploring the development potential on that with the county.
and now the BCH, they already own 224 Seward, they just,
Yes,
okay.
they recently acquired it. Their maintenance contract, though, I believe, doesn't go into effect until, or property management contract doesn't go into effect until 26.
Okay,
So I think they left the previous property management contract in place and then they're gonna take over management in 26.
That'll be good for the residents, I assume,
provide some
I'm
stability.
hopeful.
property management, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe some.
He says, yeah, Leah's like, okay, he can tell.
I don't have a lot of backstory on that. That's good to hear. Any other thoughts on this topic from the board's perspective? Okay. Infrastructure.
Maybe one little intersection with other things that we talk about, and that's the IGA. So if some of this is about what happens on the edges of town. So when I talk to people about Shady Lane, I called the county and said, what would you like to have happen there? And they said, we don't care what happens there. That's in Lyons planning area. But we no longer have a planning area in quite the way that we did
Yeah.
before. So we may not have the same deference exhibited by the county. And we could still annex it in, and Shady Lane's owners may sell it to somebody who wants to annex it in, they may want to annex it themselves, we may want to do that, but we won't have the kind of presumption from the county that those are our choices on the edge of lines that we had before.
That's fair assessment. I think that's still a little TBD to see how the county responds. You all, while we're talking about annexations and, we are gonna get a little direction from the board in an upcoming meeting. You probably remember the 5-acre rule that applies everywhere except the eastern corridor, and that was recently adopted or changed to say, and it can't have been subdivided either, after a certain date. We don't have that subdivided after language in the eastern corridor 10-acre, but we want to get some direction from the board as we think about, opportunities that may arise in the eastern corridor that we're not presuming that isn't intended to apply there too. So we're going to be getting some direction from the board that the subdividing after a certain date.
Well, because I remember doing the research prior to the board considering the 10-acre rule. There weren't any properties out there over 10 acres.
In the eastern corridor?
In that area, right in that area.
Well, so the Lucanen property is,
Looking in property.
and the Hawkins property is.
Yeah.
I believe 12 acres.
But this was just considering the area around the, what was the, water treatment plant.
You're right, none of those are larger than 10.
Right.
But we do have properties larger than 10 out there. So I think we want to make sure that the board didn't intend for that subdivide after date to also apply on the 10-acre area.
It wasn't discussed at the time originally because the Lucanen property wasn't under consideration with this.
Got it. Helpful. So I'd say TBD, stay tuned on that. Finally, just acknowledging the board has a goal for infrastructure. PCDC doesn't have any direct kind of oversight over policies related to infrastructure, but certainly everything we're talking about, influences infrastructure and transportation and utilities. So we're just going to keep that in mind as we advance any of these conversations. So I just didn't want to ignore that. How would you like to proceed? I'm getting mixed opinions from some of the boards about their desire to, continually and this often do deep dives into the comprehensive plan. I think, I think we will get the spreadsheets back from everybody, hopefully in the next couple months. And we could share an update on this with the board. I can bring this back to you. We could refine it a little more. I guess you tell me what all you think for next steps.
I worry about the comprehensive plan because it's so comprehensive. It's, and it's that that focus and prioritization issue, it gets so diffused.
How do you feel about this take on this conversation?
I think that this is good. I think it helps move it in a more focused direction. You know, it's sort of, where I worked before, there was this thought about pick 6 and do 3.
Yeah,
Okay,
So, you know, when you get to work in the morning, you work on those 3 because you're gonna get them done.
uh-huh,
And if you're really good, you're gonna get all 6 done.
sure,
But you definitely are gonna get those 3 done. You absolutely are gonna get them done, and everybody can see it every day. But the comp plan is so voluminous that it's hard to.
It's hard to
Some things could
execute.
be combined.
Sure.
And, still get more things done with focus. But, that's why I really like, taking this kind of an approach and having discussions at this kind of level.
okay. Go ahead.
I mean, I think a lot of work went into it. I wasn't involved in,
Yep.
but you know, I just, if it's the PCDC's role to ensure that this plan is being followed, which
Yep.
is my understanding,
Yep.
like, I feel we have a responsibility to keep it
Yep.
on the front burner in some way and honor all the people who put work and thought into this. But also maybe it's our job, as you've helped us do, like kind of focus it.
I kind of feel like maybe we look at the entire list every 2 or 3 years. Or that entire list could help inform the board's work plan, which then could help inform what the boards and commissions are working on.
Yeah, so if the board can focus on this and your strategy.
Yeah.
Development. And make assignments to the various boards and commissions to focus on these things and consider these other things as
Yeah,
possibilities.
and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it feels like the 4 board goals, there's a ton of alignment with the comp plan.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think there wasn't anything in there that I felt like was like diverging.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna work with the other boards and commissions to collect the rest of their work. When we have all that and I have time to kind of collate it in a way that isn't going through, I don't know how many dozens of lines of spreadsheet, I'll bring that back to you hopefully sometime in the next couple of months. In the meantime, I think our first task is wildfire mitigation conversation and the ADU conversation. And then we can build on that as we work through those.
And so we're not being irresponsible in our accountability to the board by not doing anything right now, or, you know, is there an appropriate thing we're missing, or?
I think the board, my sense, having been there only a few weeks now, is that they set some goals. They're trying to execute against those goals. So they're focused on these 4 and on a few things that are their particular projects or priorities within these 4.
Yeah.
They are less concerned about trying to figure out what the arc ought to be over the next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
They don't want to step on the authority of the incoming board, but they want to deliver on what they said they would try to do during their terms.
I agree, and I think if PCDC wanted to go deeper into some of these policies, they would not get in your way. But I don't know that if you wanted to advance policies that they haven't agreed to and their kind of overall goals, that they would actually take that step to advance some of that work. So I think that's where I don't think you're being remiss if we just kind of set aside, you know, the 60% of things we didn't talk about tonight, because we're actually advancing some things.
Okay.
And a lot of what the PCDC does is defined by what is brought to you. Right? So half of your agenda at least comes from petitions.
Right.
And if the other half has some of this sprinkled into it, that's more than the board could ask.
We're doing our jobs.
And from a capacities perspective, you all know we have Cassidy, that position, staff's not gonna be requesting to continue that FTE moving forward in the 26 budget because we have to cut.
Oh,
of
So
funding.
just FYI.
That was like a capacity building
That,
grant from DOLA and.
not for hers, I mean, we were funding that, but just when she resigned, we left it vacant. Knowing that we've had some other expenses dramatically increase that.
that means your workload is, okay,
So just my capacity is, I don't have an extra helper behind the scenes to help do a lot of this work. So just FYI, Jen, any final thoughts from you?
So we have to be really, really good to you so we can keep you for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm happy here, don't worry.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
Someone-
that.
Great.
I'd
We're
have to see.
we're a detail oriented crew, so if you need to push stuff back to us to
Okay.
help you with
Yeah.
something.
I was a planner in my previous.
Yeah.
I could,
Uh-huh.
I'm good with GIS if you need help with that. I don't know if you're comfortable with that.
I love GIS. Have you
You're-
seen the map I rebuilt?
No,
I'll
I
have to send it.
yeah, okay.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And Amy's right. We don't want to get crossways with the board, so we want to be helpful. We want to help move projects through quicker. We have those kinds of goals ourselves, so.
If you do get crosswise with the board, I'm standing with you. No?
That's right.
You're an original PCDC.
Of course you are.
Well, I think you've elevated the planning department already.
Oh, thank you, I
Yes.
appreciate that, I hope to. I
Totally.
think Lyons is a tremendous community and there's really, as a planner, like all the work you guys are doing is like all the things we wanna do, right? Like sometimes it gets a little weird and tricky and complicated, but you know, like you guys you're doing a lot of the work and I feel really lucky that I get to be the staff that executes it. So,
So cool.
okay.
Thank you for this.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, if you all think of additional feedback after you walk away, don't hesitate to reach out. This can be an evolving conversation, but we will plan on wildfire code update, on the meeting on the 27th. In addition to the review of the PUD on the eastern corridor.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Bye, Jen.
Bye, you guys.
Have a
Miss
fun.
you.
Bye.
I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Oh, don't forget to go to Evil Dead the musical on Friday with me.
Oh,
I'm gonna be
High school,
hurrying
high
back for that.
are you performing?
No, but I'm gonna encourage you to sit in the splash zone.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like it's gonna
We're
have
not
some
having a
stories
rave to
worth
the grave,
telling.
so we have to do